Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are going to complete the discussion regarding this part of the civilization course on page number 15. The first paragraph on page number 15. Cronus was so enraged at being circumvented. The word circumvented means deceived. Of course, you know that he was deceived by his wife so that Zeus couldn't be swallowed by the father, Cronus. That war between the father and son, Cronus and Zeus, became inevitable. The rival forces, which are Cronus on one part and his army, and Zeus on the other, ranged themselves on two separate high mountains in Thessaly. So we have two rivals, two opponents. Zeus, with his brothers and sisters, took his stand on Mount Olympus. This is very important because I might ask you, compare between the two forces or the two rivals standing against each other in this cosmic war. Zeus with his brothers and sisters took a stand on Mount Olympus. يعني تحصنوا في جبل Olympus, where he was joined by Oceanus. You remember Oceanus? Oceanus is Zeus's uncle, and others of the Titans who had forsaken Cronus, who had abandoned Cronus on account of his oppressions. Remember that after they aided him, they helped him in his war, he let them down and oppressed them. So on one part we have Zeus, his brothers, sisters, Oceanus, and the Titans. Cronus and his brother Titans, on the other hand, took possession of Mount Othryus, إذا تحصنوا في جبل Othryus, and prepared for battle. يبقى نخلي بالنا جدا من المقارنة بين الجيشين في الجزئية دي. The struggle was long and fierce, and at length, at the end, Zeus, finding that he was no nearer victory than before, he was in a weak position at the time, at a certain time of the battle, bethought himself of the existence of the imprisoned giants. He remembered that there are some giants imprisoned in the underworld at Tartarus, if you remember, and so he bethought himself of their existence. He remembered that they are, and these can help him in his battle against Cronus. And knowing that they would be able to render him most powerful assistance, he hastened to liberate them from Tartarus. He also called to his aid the Cyclops. The Cyclops are the sons of Poseidon and Amphitrite, the Cyclops. Okay, so in addition to his brothers, sisters, the Titans, Oceanus, he was aided by the giants and the Cyclops, who had only one eye each in the middle of their heads. So if I ask you to define the Cyclops or describe the Cyclops, they had only one eye in the middle of their foreheads, and were called bronze. So they are called the Cyclops or the bronze. Not only the bronze are or represent thunder, rad, stirrups, بين قوسين lightning يمثلوا البرق, and Perachman بيمثل fire anvil. Of course, the fire anvil is a heavy black of metal. The anvil is a heavy black metal. So the Cyclops are three: the bronze, the stirrups, and the Perkman. They immediately responded to his summons, to Zeus's summons for help, and brought with them tremendous thunderbolts, which the Hecatoncheires. Remember, the Hecatoncheires are the three giants, with their 100 hands, hurled down upon the enemy, threw down upon the enemy, fire, earthquakes, and so and so. At the same time, raising mighty earthquakes, which swallowed up and destroyed all who opposed them. Aided by these new and powerful allies, Zeus now made a furious onslaught, a furious attack on his enemies, and so tremendous was the encounter or the battle that all nature is said to have throbbed in accord with this mighty effort. Throbbed, beaten or striken. اهتز الكون كله حسبما يدعون في تلك المواجهة. Effort of the celestial deities. The sea rose mountains high based on this battle. Okay, the sea rose mountains high. ارتفع البحر كالجبال, and its angry billows. Here the word billow means waves, angry waves. Hissed it means made sounds, and foamed. To foam is to make a foam or to make bubbles, masses, and foamed. The earth shook to its foundations, earthquakes. The heavens sent forth rolling thunder, and flash after flash of death-bringing lightning, whilst a blinding mist, Labab, enveloped Cronus and his allies. This is a description of the scene during this battle, after Zeus got the help from the Hecatoncheires and others. And now the fortunes of war began to turn. The fortunes, it means the chances of winning the war, began to turn, and victory smiled on Zeus. Cronus and his army were completely overthrown. His brothers dispatched to the gloomy depths of the lower world. Okay, and Cronus himself was banished from his kingdom and deprived forever of the supreme power, which now became vested. His supreme power became vested. It means was granted to his son Zeus. This war was called, and this is very important, the Titanomachia. The Titanomachia. So if I ask you what is that Titanomachia, or define Titanomachia, it is the war between Zeus and his allies and on one part, and Cronus and his allies on the other. And you begin describe the forces of each side. Titanomachia. And is most graphically described. Most graphically, it means most vividly described by the all classic poets. With the defeat of Cronus and his banishment from his dominions, from his rule, from his domains, his career as a ruling Greek divinity entirely ceases, stops. But being, like all the gods, immortal, he was supposed to be still in existence, though possessing no longer either influence or authority, of course. His place being filled to a certain extent by his descendant and successor, Zeus, of course. Cronus is often represented in literary works as an old man leaning يتكئ على on a scythe. You know, the scythe is a farming tool. What we call in Arabic al-mingal, okay, but with a longer stick. with an hourglass, so leaning on a scythe, and in his hand an hourglass, ساعة رملية. The hourglass, or what we call the sand hour, symbolizes the fast fleeting moments. الحياة التي تمر سريعا، أو اللحظات التي تمر سريعا. As they succeed each other unceasingly, without any stop. The skies is symbolic of time, which mows down, which cuts down all before it. So we have two symbols, and this is very important: the hourglass and the skies of Kronos. The hourglass symbolizes the fast fleeting moments, and the skies symbolizes time, which mows down, which cuts down everything before it or in front of it. The Romans, according to their custom of identifying their deities with those of the Greek gods, whose attributes were similar to their own, declared Kronos to be identical with their old agriculture divinity Saturn. So this entity, this deity Kronos, is found in the Roman civilization, but under another title or another name, Saturn. They believe that after his defeat in the Titanomachia, in this great cosmic war of deities or mythical gods, and his banishment from his dominions by Zeus, he took refuge with Janus. Who is Janus? Janus is the king of Italy, who received the exiled deity with great kindness, and even shared his throne with him. Their united reign became so thoroughly peaceful and happy, and was distinguished by such uninterrupted prosperity, that it was called the Golden Age. The Golden Age. And as for the Golden Age, there is an entire section dedicated to this, to handling such an age and others, of course. Let's move to this section talking about Rhea. On page 18, Rhea, or Ops, or Cybele. She has three names indeed: Rhea, Ops, and Cybele. Rhea, the wife of Kronos. You remember that she was the wife, of course, of Kronos, the late king, a mother of Zeus and the other great gods of Olympus. She personified the earth. So Rhea stands for the earth and was regarded as the great mother. So she has indeed four names: Rhea, Ops, Cybele, and the Great Mother, and unceasing producer of all plant life. She was also believed to exercise unbounded sway. Unbounded sway, it means limitless influence, unlimited influence, sway over the animal creation, more especially over the lion, Al-Asad, the noble king of beasts. Rhea is generally represented wearing, of course, represented in artworks. يعني كيف تصور في الأعمال الأدبية، سواء لوحات أو أعمال أدبية أخرى، روايات أو أشعار. She is represented wearing a crown of turrets or towers. The turrets are small flowers, okay, or minarets, small flowers, and seated. So she has a turret and seated on a throne, with lions crouching at her feet, lions bowing at her feet, bending down at her feet as a kind of submission to her. She's sometimes depicted sitting in a chariot. You know, the chariot, as I told you before, is a four-wheeled carriage drawn by horses or any other animals. Here, the chariot was drawn by lions. The principal seat of her worship, which was always of a very righteous character, the place of her worship was always noisy, full of noise, sounds. And this place was at Crete, the island of Crete, in the Mediterranean, of course. At her festivals, which took place at night, only at night, the wildest music of flutes. The flutes are wind instruments. Cymbals. The cymbals are the curved plates or the curved desks اللي احنا بنسميها في الثقافة المصرية الصاجات. Curved discs. And drums resounded, reverberated, echoed in the place, whilst joyful shouts and cries, accompanied by dancing and loud stamping of feet. The stamping of feet, the striking of feet on the ground, so they make sounds. So this place was really, really very noisy. We have flutes, cymbals, shouts, cries, dancing, stamping of feet, and so filled the air. This divinity, which is Re, of course, was introduced into Crete by its first colonists from Phrygia, which is in Asia Minor, what is known now as Turkey. Asia Minor, Turkey, in which country she was worshipped under the name of Cybele. The people of Crete adored her as the Great Mother, more especially in her signification. Why did they adore this woman or this deity, this goddess? Because of her signification, because of her importance as the sustainer of the vegetable world, the life giver of the green world, the supporter of the green world. Seeing, however, that year by year, as winter appears, all her glory vanishes. Her flowers fade in the winter, of course, and her trees become leafless, bila awraq. They poetically express this process of nature under the figure of a lost love. So this process, this natural process, was a symbol of a lost love, poetically speaking, or figuratively speaking. She was said to have been tenderly attached to a youth of remarkable beauty. So she fell in love with a common youth, but with a very beautiful look or shape. His name was Attis, who, to her grief and indignation means angry or even wrath, غضب شديد, he proved faithless to her. So he betrayed her. How? He was about to unite himself to a nymph. The nymph is a natural creature appearing as a beautiful maiden. بنسميها باللغة العربية النمفز اللي هم الحور. Called this woman or this nymph is called Sagaris. When in the midst of the wedding feast of Attis and Sagaris, the rage of the insensate goddess, the angry goddess, the rage of Rhea, suddenly burst forth upon all present, upon the attendants of the feast wedding. A panic seized the assembled guests, and Attis, becoming afflicted with temporary madness, so as a consequence, he was afflicted, he was tortured or distressed, he was caught by a kind of temporary madness, جنون مؤقت. He fled to the mountains and destroyed himself and killed himself. Cybele, Rhea, moved with sorrow and regret, she was influenced by this incident. She was sorrowful and regretful. ندمت وحزنت كثيرا لما حدث. She instituted yearly mourning for his loss. She established a mourning, يعني حزن أو بكاء على ذلك الرجل, every year. Grieving. Mourning, it means grieving or lamentation. حزن, بكاء, or عويل حتى, for his loss. When her priestess, the Corybants. So if I ask you, who are the Corybants? You say they are the priestess of Rhea, the great mother. So the Corybants, with their usual noisy accompaniments means musical instruments, they marched into the mountains. They went to the mountains to seek the lost youth, to search for him. Having discovered him or his body, his corpse, they gave full vent to their ecstatic delight. They expressed their emotional delight by indulging in the most violent gesticulations, by yielding to, by giving in to, استسلموا لي, okay? The most violent gesticulations. Gesticulations are the movements of the hands and the body. Gesticulations means movements of the hands and body. Dancing, shouting, and at the same time, even wounding and gashing them. So they wounded and gashed themselves. To gash is to cut, to wound themselves in a frightful manner. Now let's move to divisions of the world. How the world was divided among the gods. Zeus and his brothers, the Titans, having gained a complete victory over their enemies in the Titanomacheia. Remember this term very, very well. Began to consider how the world which they had conquered should be divided among or between them. At last, it was settled, or it was decided by lot. So, the world should be divided by casting lots, by chance. It means by chance. عن طريق القرعة. That Zeus should reign supreme in heaven, whilst Hades or Hades, he was called Hades or Hades, should reign supreme in heaven, should reign or govern the lower world. So Zeus in heaven and Hades or Hades in the underworld. And Poseidon had full command over the sea, but the supremacy of Zeus was recognized in all three kingdoms, in heaven, on earth, in which of course the sea was included, and under the earth or in the underworld. Zeus held his court on the top of Mount Olympus. His court or his palace or Balatul Malaki, and كان on the Mount Olympus, whose summit was beyond the clouds. It wasn't seen if you are on the ground, so you can see the summit of this Mount Olympus because it was shrouded in clouds, above the clouds. The dominions of Hades. As for Hades, his dominions were the gloomy unknown regions below the earth, تحت الأرض. And Poseidon reigned over the sea. It will be seen that the realm of each of these gods was enveloped in mystery. Each dominion of each god was enveloped, it means was surrounded in mystery. عالم يملأه الغموض. Olympus, for example, Olympus was shrouded in mists. Mount Olympus was surrounded by mists. ضباب. Hades or Hades was wrapped in gloomy darkness. The underworld is wrapped in gloomy darkness. And the sea was, and indeed still is, a source of wonder and deep interest for explorers. Hence, we see that what to other creatures or what to other nations were merely strange phenomena, we believe that these are strange phenomena, served these poetical and imaginative people like the Greek people. Greek people. And by the word imaginative, I mean people with supernatural beliefs. People with supernatural or mythical beliefs. So, these strange phenomena served as a foundation upon which to build the wonderful story of their mythology. It means that poets, novelists derived their thoughts and themes, symbols from these supernatural beliefs or phenomena. The division of the world being now satisfactorily arranged, كل واحد خد اللي هو عايزه. It would seem that all things ought to have gone on smoothly. But such wasn't the case. No, it didn't go so smoothly. Trouble arose in an unlooked for quarter, in an unexpected. Unlooked for, it means unexpected. Quarter, it means place. From a place that no God has ever expected it to do so. ايه هو المكان ده؟ مين هما اللي عملوا مشاكل؟ The giants. Remember the giants? Remember the difference between the titans and the giants? The giants or the gigantes, they have two names, giants or gigantes. Those hideous monsters. Hideous means terrible, disgusting monsters. Some were with legs formed of serpents. Some of the legs of these monsters were merely serpents or snakes. These monsters who had sprung from the earth and the blood of Uranus. You remember the blood of Uranus? We discussed that before. Declared war against the triumphant deities of Olympus. Declared war against Zeus. And a struggle ensued. A struggle followed, which, in consequence of Gaia having made these children of hers invincible as long as they kept their feet on the ground, was wearisome and protracted. What is that? What does that mean? Gaia gave a feature or an attribute to her sons, the giants, that as long as they kept their legs on the ground, they become invincible. لا يقهروا طالما يقفون على الأرض بأرجلهم. In case not, they become vincible. لو تحركوا أو إذا أصبحت أقدامهم لا تلامس الأرض فبالتالي يمكن هزيمتهم. Okay, so this battle this confrontation was wearisome, was tiring, exhausting, and protracted, continued for a long time, extended. Their mother's precaution, however, was rendered unavailing. This condition that they should stay on the ground, their feet on the ground always, this feature proved to be unavailing. Unavailing, it means futile, useless. By pieces of rock being hurled upon them. So the army of Zeus hurled rocks upon the giants, and so which threw them down, and their feet being no longer placed firmly on their mother earth, they no longer become attached to their mother earth by having rocks thrown at them. They were overcome. And this tedious war, this wearisome, this tiring, exhausting war, which was called the Gigantomachia. And here you should pay attention to the difference and the meaning of Gigantomachia and Titanomachia. I think you remember moments ago we mentioned Titanomachia is the war of the Titans, the war between Kronos and his army and Zeus and his army on the other hand. So we have Titanomachia, war of the Titan gods or the Titans, and Gigantomachia, war between the giants and Zeus, or the giants and the Titans. Titanomachia and Gigantomachia. At last came to an end. The war ended. Among the gods, the most daring of these earth-born giants were Enceladus, Ramtus, and the valiant Mimas, who, with youthful fire and angry, hurled against heaven, against Zeus, great massive rock and burning oak trees, and defied the lightnings of Zeus. يعني مجموعة من أسماء العمالقة. One of the most powerful monsters who opposed Zeus in this war was called Typhon, one of the giants who was the most tiring or the most exhausting of all was Typhon, or Tethmus. He was the youngest son of Tartarus and Gaia. He was the youngest son of Tartarus and Gaia, and had 100 heads, with eyes which struck terror to the beholders, to the viewers. Anyone who sees this monster, this giants, became terrified, with eyes which struck terror to the beholder, and awe-inspiring voices, and arousing fear. Awe-inspiring, it means fear-inspiring. They inspired fear. Okay, frightful to hear. This dreadful monster resolved to conquer both gods and men. This monster, Typhon, decided to conquer both men and gods. But his plans were at the end defeated by Zeus, who, after a violent encounter with Typhon, succeeded in destroying him with a thunderbolt. But not before he had so terrified the gods, Typhon, that they had fled to refuge to Egypt, where they metamorphosed. The other gods, being very fearful, they've become very afraid of Typhon during this battle, that they escaped to Egypt and metamorphosed themselves into different animals and thus escaped. يعني metamorphosed, transformed in nature or form. The process of metamorphosis, when a land worm climbs up a tree and hangs upside down from a branch, and then after some time it turns into a butterfly. This process we call, or it is known as, metamorphosis. Okay, عملية التحول الطبيعي. Thank you, dear students, and see you next lecture, inshallah, on the on the civilization course. Thank you.